Hello, welcome to River Reflections. I'm Rosemary Barnes. My husband Robert and I are the co-pastors, co-founders of Grand Rapids River of Life Ministries. We want to know you're welcome to come visit us and check us out. Please do so if you're looking for a church home. I want to get right into the lesson tonight because I have this, I did it for last week's program, this lesson on why wait until you're married to have sexual intimacy. And I want to continue on with this lesson, and hopefully I finish all of my points tonight. I hope you heard it last week. My first point was, why wait? Because God said so. And I shared with you different verses that showed that God very much in the New Covenant writing still is against somebody being a fornicator. That word fornicator, the Greek word that's being translated as fornication, is something like porneo, something like that, and that is the word we get pornography from. And as I said last week, I think we could say, right now I'm talking mostly about avoiding sexual intimacy before marriage, but if you want to get technical about sexual impurity, I think we could broaden it to incest, pornography, of course adultery. Fornication is unmarried. One of them's well, actually, they're both unmarried because you commit adultery as soon as just one of the parties is married to somebody else. Now you're committing adultery. But we need, as Christians, to avoid all sexual impurity, to be like Joseph, who literally ran from it when Potiphar's wife in Genesis tried to seduce him into laying with her. We need to run. It says, flee fornication. And last week I read the verses about every other sin is outside of your body, but when you commit fornication, you're messing with the temple of the Holy Ghost. You are deeply grieving the temple of the Spirit of the Holy Ghost when you commit fornication. But I want to move on to share some more reasons why to wait. I should tell you the first few reasons were, one, because God said so. And we want to please Him, and we want to be in good standing so that come time to be in His kingdom, we can be a part of it. It says we're not going to inherit the kingdom if we're fornicators. That's only one thing on the list, but it's one of them. Two, I discuss unwanted pregnancy, including abortion, adoption, keeping the baby, but the fact you wouldn't have that issue in the first place if you stayed celibate. You're not going to get pregnant if you're celibate. You stand to get pregnant. Slim chance with birth control pills, but we all know you could forget. And I'll tell you another thing I forgot to say last week, which is almost incredible, but an previous abortion worker, now Christian, said that because the abortions, they solicited the young high school girls through the school counselors, you know, we can take care of your problem, you can get an abortion, it'll be private. And the lady that worked at the abortion clinic said her particular clinic anyway deliberately prescribed some sort of low dose birth control pill that they knew the kids would get pregnant on. Now I have the movie, I have the lady, I have her name. I know she said that because I was appalled at the idea they wanted them to be pregnant. And then she talked about the big business, the millions and millions and millions made by the abortion doctors. Now I am not sitting here believing that every single abortion clinic in the United States does this same horrible thing. But how do you know that the one you go to would do something like that? You don't know. All I know is the only positive way to make sure you don't get pregnant is don't have sexual intercourse, period, or anything close to it where the materials needed to combine have an opportunity to combine with one another. You understood that, didn't you? Okay. Another reason is, trying to think, did I share anything else? Unwanted pregnancy, diseases. I talked about diseases last week. Again, if you're celibate and you marry somebody who's been celibate, you probably won't transmit a sexual disease. Now, the only exception I could think about is somebody that inherited HIV by birth or blood transfusion, which I would think they would know that at the time, and as a Christian surely should tell you. But barring that, it would be very rare that you could get a sexual disease from somebody that's never had intercourse. I'm just being real. you know, just about everything you say, usually you can think of this one obscure case where, whatever. Okay, but number 4 reason, I've already been through God said not to, unwanted pregnancy, diseases. 4. Now this one's important, I believe. I wrote it like this: complications in what should have been a relaxed time of getting to know each other and choosing whether or not you're right for each other. Especially a Christian who's going to feel guilt if they fornicate. They're going to, in fact, I as a pastor have a real hard time with, you're dating somebody, you confess to me you're fornicating, and my attitude is, look, now you need to either marry this person or break up with this person, because it's been my experience that it's a rare instance that once somebody has fornicated, they're going to keep going together and keep from doing again. That is, I'm not saying it can't be done. It is just so rare. You need to either get away from around them or marry them, because you're going to keep doing that. It's just the way it is. Unless you vow not to kiss them and keep it, I don't know. It's just shaky once you've been familiar in that way not to keep doing that. I'd almost challenge people to write me letters to say, well, that's not true because I knew 6 people or whatever. I haven't met one yet that did that and then was able, if they had any amount of time between their dating and when they finally got married, that they were literally able to leave each other alone. It is so rare. And the complications that develop is, first of all, you feel guilty, so then you think, oh man, I need to be marrying this person because I'm already intimate with them. That's one. Another one is, if you don't have any intimacy, now I'm going to include French kissing, heavy makeout sessions, I'm going to include that in there because that turns your mind around. That kicks in lust. Then you're infatuated. You're not objective enough to figure out, is this a person that I believe God has for me to be a lifetime partner for the following reasons. They love the Lord with all their heart. We have the following things in common. And you list your things in common. And I would even include, let's put it like this, it's a rare person that can marry somebody of an entirely, radically different culture. Say you marry somebody from a country where their diet is snake, dog, monkey. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm saying there are cultures like that. And their whole diet and their schedule is stay up until 2 a.m. and get up at noon. That's their culture, say. There are, you know, when I'm down in Argentina, they stay up a whole lot later, get up later, and have siestas every afternoon. The hardcore, culturally entrenched people do these things. Is this how I want? I could live like that, but my only point is you need to check out this person's lifestyle, their whole cultural thing. Can you live with their culture? And if the fact, and do their people, their family, are these people that you want to have most all your major holidays with? Does their music get on your last nerve, or are these people that you don't mind spending a holiday with? I'm going to tell you, if I'm going to spend a holiday with everybody that their only idea of a good party is when the cops come and break it up, I don't think that's the family I want to be in. And I've been in situations like that way years, decades ago, where that's how it was. And the stereo was booming so loud, people called the cops just on that. The dope was freely done. People get into arguments. Somebody's subject to pull out a gun. Been there, done that, seen that. I don't want to be in that culture. And that's, if you're getting all kissy face and intimate with somebody, you narrow your little world down to the thrill that that person is giving you, and you forget to stand back and evaluate, is this somebody in her or his frame of reference that I can be with from now on in, considering what they gravitate towards. You might, I would never have, never will, marry somebody for their money. But on the other hand, who wants to go out of their way to marry somebody that just filed bankruptcy and never can rub 2 dimes together, dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, doesn't half want to work? I mean, it's not like you're not wanting to marry, like you're after somebody's money that you're marrying. But on the other hand, we don't have to go the other extreme and live in a single-wide mobile home in the worst trailer court in town with junkies and drug addicts surrounding us the rest of the days of our life, not to mention our children. Lifestyle means something, people. So when you start to get all kissy-face and intimate, and there's stars in your eyes, and this is your whole world, you better know you got blinders on because your bodily lust sidetracked your good sense. And before you know it, you're stuck in something that you really don't want to live with. So I'm just saying, you can avoid all that if you step back and get to be friends with the person first, really find out where they're coming, and ask yourself, is this somebody I want to go further with? Better yet, do group dates or church functions. Get to know somebody that way before you even go further and even hurt somebody. Be careful. Be careful. I think that the biggest way somebody can really mess up their life is to marry somebody that within a month they're going, what was I thinking? And now here I am. This is my wife. This is my husband. That is just a horror show. Believe me. Number 5, waiting to have sex, telling that person, I don't want to go there, I'm not going to do this. The very fact they're pressuring you ought to tell you something about their character. But it's a character test, whether or not somebody, a fellow Christian, is choosing to walk after the flesh or after the Spirit of God. And you know what? If they always choose to walk after the flesh, they're going to walk in the flesh in other areas that are hurtful as well. I'm going to list you. In other words, let the person pass the test of whether or not they want to live a crucified life. Again, it doesn't mean if you've fallen and you say, you know what, we love each other, we love the Lord, we need to get married soon. We have fallen, or break up, but we have fallen and we love each other and we're both so sorry we have fallen. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't marry the person that you've fallen with. I'm just saying if you've got somebody constantly wanting to fall, there's not even sorrow. They aren't even helping you try to overcome this temptation. That person's character has major leaks in it, major weaknesses in it. The Bible says in Galatians 5:19, it lists the works of the flesh. They're adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings. Okay, here's the thing. If he's living it, or she, either one, is living in the flesh concerning, I don't care what God says, I want to have sex tonight. If they're living in the flesh in that area, if they walk according to the flesh, they're going to have some of those other little things, big things on that list too. Hatred isn't a fun thing to live with. Wrath, drunkenness, heresies, being with somebody that believes some really ridiculous things about the ways of the Lord, and you're like, I can't believe you believe that, that's just crazy. All these things are works of the flesh. So if they got a problem with fornication and they're living in the flesh, they're going to have problems with other areas in the flesh either, because flesh is flesh in every area. Whereas the fruit of the Spirit is love. You want that in your marriage, don't you? Joy, yeah. Peace, yeah. Long-suffering, they're patient with you. They're gentle, they're good, they're faithful, they're meek, they're temperate. Temperate would allude to sexual activity as well as long-suffering, being patient, able to wait, being a patient person. Patient. If you're engaged to somebody who's got overseas duties, he doesn't talk you into having sex before he leaves, because what if I die? No, they patiently even see, if I live or I die, I'm not going to grab something that doesn't belong to me. I think a lot of women have fallen for but I'm going to be deployed, I might die. What if we never get to, well, get married then, if everything else is lining up. Then you're free to do that 60 times a day if you want. But don't use a bunch of excuses to get somebody, I don't even know if somebody could do that 60 times a day, but nonetheless, don't use a bunch of excuses for you need to give this to me. If that person's not walking in the Spirit consistently and isn't convicted, if you mess up, you don't want to live with them. How are you going to trust them later, whether or not they're going to fool around on you? Adultery is also a work of the flesh. If they're tempted at work, if they're on a business trip, And then afterwards everybody goes to the club, and then there's dancing music, and then they get all turned on by somebody else. What in the world is going to keep them if they couldn't crucify the flesh with you? What's going to keep them from crucifying the flesh with another attractive person? How's that going to happen? I'm not saying everybody that messes up before they get married is going to be adulterous. I'm saying you're taking a big chance. It's a test of character whether or not they are fornicators. 6, moral authority is lost when you mess up. You don't have moral authority with the person that you've seduced. They know you've messed up, you're weak, and it takes time to regain. I'm not saying it can't ever be regained. You can regain moral authority in time. What you did when you were 19 isn't necessarily what you're doing when you're 45. But you know what? I can still list you people from my home church in Byron Center who, quote unquote, had to get married. And it was a reproach that never leaves. You think of that when you think of that couple that did not wait, and the woman was pregnant, and everybody knew it. They could count when the baby came. She was pregnant when they got married. Everybody knew it, and there was a reproach on the family, on the church, on the person. Your moral authority, like I said before, you get defiled when you mess around like that. You get defiled. And even though you can be redeemed from so many things by proving yourself over time to be a good husband, wife, mother, church worker, whatever, still, you know, I remember strong the couples in our church who have the testimony. I think of Karen Vandervliet. She was how old she got married, and she could have a testimony that we all could just say, well, thank God. Thank God for that. I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her name, but I'm so utterly impressed when anybody can say that the wedding night was the first time that there was total sexual intimacy. I'm thrilled, and I'll never forget that. Probably a month won't go by for the rest of my life I don't thrill in the fact that there's a list of people I know have achieved that. Think about that. You don't want the rest of your life for everybody to remember that you just couldn't wait. You just had to defile the situation. Yes, I'm happy you got married. Yes, I'm happy you've been faithful since. I would have been much happier if you wouldn't have messed up before you got married. I've been happier if the early backsliding days of my life had never happened. I'm not talking as a person who has in fact obeyed the Bible all my life. I haven't. And the reproach will always be with me concerning, I should say, disappointment. I'm disappointed that ever was anything less than complete purity. I'm disappointed, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every person that I share that history with. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, but nothing can change it. You can't rewrite history. But if you're 14 right now and you have never been with anybody, you at 65, which I am now, you can say, you know what? I've kept myself pure all the days of my life. And you'll be so grateful you did. So grateful. But you can lose moral authority during those days that you're messing up. If you happen to have a position of authority in church, you can lose that completely by committing fornication or, God forbid, adultery as well. 7, you can avoid a broken heart. You can avoid breaking somebody else's heart or having your own broken if you avoid intimacy. For many of us, intimacy is a signal that we're close, that we have some sort of an agreement together, that something's going to happen down the road where we're going to get even closer, we're going to get married. I'm talking about Christians now. Of course, the world can go out there and they know it's dime a dozen, flavor of the month, all that. I'm talking about Christians now. We can break each other's heart because we think, well, you know, we're going steady and I'm assuming we're going to go further, and why don't we? Because there's not going to be anybody else. Guess what? A lot of times there can be somebody else. And now you've got a broken heart because you thought the person by their actions towards you was saying, we will get married one day. Or you're thinking that of a Christian guy. Of course he's going to marry me. He wouldn't be doing this. How could he do this if he wasn't planning to marry me? We're the only people we're going to know each other that way. He's not going to leave me. You don't have a guarantee until you are, in fact, you don't have a guarantee as a marriage covenant. But at least a marriage covenant is the very highest we can do to ensure we're not out to break each other's heart deliberately. I want to add this too. My husband and I used to have this big argument about kissing girls. I mean significantly. I don't mean a quick peck on her cheek or a quick peck like you give your grandma on her mouth. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about kissing romantically. And he was from an era where, and I was too as a matter of fact, where of course you kissed each other goodnight. It didn't mean that much. But I think now, in our church, I know it's true, and I'm sure in other churches that take things more seriously, if a guy in our church kissed some girl goodnight, and then took somebody else out 2 weeks later and kissed her goodnight, took somebody else out 3 weeks later and kissed her goodnight, you'd have those three women, first of all, having a hard time receiving each other, and I was looking at the guy like he's wild and loose, even though all he did was kiss. Why? Because a girl, at least in our church, is going to take pretty seriously if it gets to that point that somebody's going to kiss her romantically. You could hurt her that way. So I think some of our girls are saying, no, you ain't going to kiss me romantically unless at least we're engaged, if not married. Some of you think that's crazy. I understand it because there's way too much stuff going on. So at least there's more guarantee you won't get your heart broken if you don't let just everybody kiss you or kiss everybody. 8, avoid defiling the spouse of another person. Yes, I'm talking about fornication. Again, back to a church setting. You did that with somebody, you broke up with her, now she's so-and-so's wife and they're sitting across the aisle from you. That's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. Especially if you and the woman are the only ones that know that the two of you are intimate, the husband's oblivious to it, and you know in a sense you have defiled what should have been purely and only his. I think the golden rule can come into play here. Do unto others as you want to be done. Whoever it is God created out there for you as a husband or wife, do you want somebody else, even as I speak, to be having intimate sexual relationships with that person that one day you are going to take on as a spouse, and the only slight touch of sorrow added to it is the awareness she had somebody else before she had you. And it gets a lot worse if the guy's in the same church with you. It gets awfully sticky, I believe. Now think about that. You might not agree with me, but start to put yourself in the shoes of that situation and ask yourself, how do you feel knowing you know the guy that had your wife before you did? I think that as Christians, we should not touch each other if we're not married, just to avoid, just to keep that free for the person who in fact is going to marry that person that you're tempted to be with. 9, losing a good reputation. The Bible says in Proverbs 22:1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. I'm going to tell you right now, women, I'm listening because I check out some people's Facebooks, and then I check out our young people, check out links to some of the current popular music. I am appalled. One young lady was, I can't even repeat what she said, but if I can say it in a generalized way, she was basically trying to be like guys used to be like, I don't care about your talk. Part of the words are blah, 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 blah. Literally, lyrics of the song. I don't want your blah, 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 blah. I want your, and it implies sexual intimacy. The woman is singing the song. In my day, that would be absolutely, that'd be porn. That would be unheard of. That would be like that woman has deliberately trashed herself in front of everybody. I heard somebody say not long ago that somebody literally grabbed somebody, a woman, in his private parts in a club situation. And the person that was close to me was absolutely offended by that a woman would do that to him. I'm saying to you women, I don't care how you think it's 2012 and things have changed. I'm going to tell you something. If you ever want a husband and kids, a man is not looking for a woman that aggressive, defiled, promiscuous, perverse. If I were a guy, I'd be like mad at a judge who got after me for slapping a woman who grabbed me in that way. I'd be like, wait a minute. If a woman slapped a guy because he grabbed her, you wouldn't be saying anything. I should be filing a sexual harassment suit right now. I'm saying women have gone wild. Just wild. And I'm saying to you, your reputation, it's going to take a lot of time to get that reputation back if you're falling for this junk. of being wild, and you can get away with it. You can't get away with it. Men will be sensitive that it's not their wife that has been acting like a trashy slut. They don't want that. They might want it in the bar for a night. They don't want that for life. Sure don't want that as the mother of their kids. 11, economic hardship. When you get married, because you got married because you were burning, and you do it before you've completed your training or education, you're not going to have the same socioeconomic bracket as you are if you're patient and you wait until you're married. You have a child out of wedlock, that child can pick up a spirit of illegitimacy. I've had one. I know what it took to warfare through rejection, sense of being unwanted. It is heavy. Most kids that are adopted or illegitimate have to deal with rejection. 13, don't force other Christians to distance themselves from you. Paul said, put away from among yourself that wicked person. He said in 1 Corinthians 5, and he's talking about somebody committing fornication. He said, don't associate with those that call themselves Christians who are fornicators. You disregard instruction, poverty and shame will come to you. It says in Proverbs 6:32, you're going to have a wound and dishonor and reproach if you commit adultery. 15, there will be lifelong regret. If you have I experienced it. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm here to tell you is a lifelong regret for every person who has disobeyed the rules of God, not only concerning sexual purity. If you've ever gotten busted for selling marijuana or armed robbery or whatever, every time you go to get a job, they're going to ask you, have you ever been convicted of a felony? So every time you break the law of God, that follows your conscience in you. Yes, God forgives you. Yes, God makes you white as snow, but it doesn't mean you don't still live with HIV. It doesn't mean you didn't have 2 illegitimate children or 4, and every time you talk with these kids and they're looking at one's a Mexican, one's black, one's white, one's Oriental, what's up? Well, this was so-and-so baby daddy, and this, all your life these things will follow you if you don't obey God's law. The best way to have peace and joy in your life, just find out what God has told you to do to keep from being disturbed and have a lack of peace and have to deal with a whole lot of regret and mess because you didn't have enough sense to know that your Creator knows what's best for you better than you know and I know. God bless you for listening to this.